remember, raising your cortisol acutely is not a bad thing. Going for an intense spin workout is an amazing thing. But what happens is we don't often give ourselves enough recovery from these. And over time, this kind of seems to affect our cortisol system, especially in perimenopause, because we have that sensitivity to stress that's altered. So cut out activities, just walking, yoga, any kind of Pilates, just for that 3 to 5 day period, you're going to notice yourself rejuvenated. Welcome back to the America's Doctor series with Dr. Amy Shah. This is my YouTube channel, Save Yourself with Dr. Amy Shah, and I'm here to tell you all the things I wish I could tell you as America's doctor. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about the cortisol reset, the 5-day cortisol reset. I'm going to tell you why you need it and how you can get it. So let's go. All right, friends, I'll be honest with you. I didn't really know exactly what cortisol was and what it did, because in medical school, we kind of think of cortisol as this acute phase reactant, meaning something that happens very quickly and something that we don't know much about. And I didn't really understand what happens to it, during perimenopause for women over 40. I didn't understand what happens to it for people who are younger. I didn't really understand, based on what's out there in social media, that it can be a great thing. Not just a bad thing. So I think we often hear of cortisol issues as being very bad for you, but they can actually be good for you too. So I think the real thing that we want to talk about here is how to create a cortisol balance that's beneficial for your health. But that doesn't sound very sexy. So we're going to call it the 5-day cortisol reset. So remember, I didn't say 5-day cortisol lowering per se, because it's not necessarily lowering, it's resetting. So biologically speaking, and the doctors out there who are listening, you remember that cortisol kind of goes on a day and night cycle. So kind of is the thing that wakes you up when you get up in the morning. Cortisol goes up upon awakening and it makes you feel alert and awake. And also, those days where you wake up startled, it's kind of that is cortisol. And then it goes down in the evening, and it will go down so low that it actually helps you sleep. But you can imagine that doing things that are going to raise your cortisol in the evening, like high intensity workouts or really activating conversations or fights, conflict especially, can raise your cortisol and prevent you from falling asleep. So you really do want this nice cycle, the diurnal cycle, like two different peaks, a peak and a valley at the end of the day. But most of you probably don't realize that this diurnal variation actually flattens out during perimenopause. So for the woman in perimenopause, so for those of you who don't know, perimenopause is all the years before menopause. Usually that decline starts in your 30s, usually late 30s. Perimenopause for each individual person can last about 7 to 10 years. But if you look at the wide variation between ages of menopause, this is an age range group from like mid 30s all the way into your 50s. So it's a huge age range. And this is an age range which a lot of people feel sleep disturbances, and they also feel fatigued during the day. And if you do feel either of those two, which are the two most common things I hear from my patients, from my colleagues, from my readers, from my followers, that is something that I'm going to be talking about today. We're going to talk about actionable things you can do to actually help improve this. If you're not in perimenopause, but you're someone in your 20s or you're a male and you're like, I'm looking for more energy and better sleep because I'm having sleep disturbances or I'm having trouble falling asleep, staying asleep, and then I feel tired during the day, this episode is also for you. If you are someone who is trying to figure out how to lower your stress levels in general, this episode is for you. If you are someone who's trying to diagnose or treat a specific disease, this episode may not be for you because we're talking in very general terms. And if you have a specific disease or concern, that has to be dealt with more individually. So let's get to it. So like I told you, the cortisol cycle is high during the morning hours and then tends to lower during the evening hours. And we know, like I told you, that this kind of flattens out a little bit during perimenopause, and the area under the curve tends to be higher, meaning the levels of cortisol throughout a perimenopause, especially in late perimenopause, meaning you're getting close to that menopausal age. So I'm talking, if you're typically getting menopause at 41, I'm talking about the 48, 49, 50, 51. Those years can be very tumultuous because your baseline cortisol levels are higher as well. So not only is that curve kind of flattened out, you also have more cortisol in general. And then the other thing that happens is that you are more sensitive to stressors. This is so annoying. This is hey, I did everything I used to do in my 20s, but now I have cortisol issues, or I have hormone issues, or my PMS is worse, or my symptoms are worse, or I'm so tired. For example, drinking tons of caffeine, staying up late, and trying to survive like that, and maybe doing some high intensity workouts and having an intense job, or emotional relationships, that really can throw you off in this age range. Whereas when you were younger, you could probably tolerate that at least for a given amount of time. And so not only is the curve flattened, it's also raised a little bit, like there's more area under the curve in late menopause. And scientifically speaking, you are more wired for stressful events. So the same things that didn't really stress you out before are stressing you out now. And I use stress very loosely, but stress and cortisol are a little bit different. But in this case, I'm kind of combining the two just for simplicity of our conversation, so I can give you actionable steps that you can actually do today to improve your symptoms. Things that you can do over a 5-day range, which will make you feel so good. So I'll give you an example. I have someone I'm working with who is a female in her 40s, and she works a very, very demanding job. She's in healthcare. She stays up late. She has a lot of responsibility. She is a go-getter. She's an amazing person. She balances it all. So I help her both with her social media and career, but also with her health. Okay. And this was a big issue that kept coming up. We kept talking about how her symptoms, and so many women in this age group, the 30s all the way to the 50s, suffer from this cortisol dysregulation. And what we decided for her is we were going to do a 5-day cortisol reset. And that is what this episode is based on, because after doing it for myself and doing it for other people, I tried it on many people who really noticed a big change in their health from this. So what you're going to do is for 5 days, you're going to modify your life. So it doesn't have to be 5 days. It can be 3 days. So like it can be a long weekend. It can be Friday, Saturday, Sunday. It can be 5 days. And what you're going to do is you're going to do things that are out of the ordinary, that are really relaxing for your nervous system and for your hormonal system. So what we want to do is we want you to try as much as possible for these days, 3 to 5 days, to shift your nervous system back into parasympathetic mode and to calm your hormones so that your cortisol levels in the evening are lower and that they are higher in the morning. And so you get this nice diurnal variation that you should have, right? So step one, day one, is reducing the amount of stimulants in your life, especially late in the day. So you want certain stimulants at the beginning of the day. So you want sunlight within the first hour of the day, okay? But you don't want stimulants at the end of the day, which is caffeine. Certain medications can be very stimulating. Anything that is kind of like promoting focus or awakeness, energy. Any energy drinks, any energizing supplements, a lot of them have caffeine. A lot of them have activating things that are messing up your sleep. You really want to cut that out late in the day. So if you're a coffee drinker, you really want to stop between 12 and 2. For me, it's 12 just because it's an easy number, but can be 2 o'clock depending on when you go to bed. You definitely want to stop at 6 to 8 hours before bed because of the half-life. So during this time, you want to cut out or cut down the caffeine use, especially in the afternoon. So for me, I tend to not have much caffeine, but sometimes the occasional kombucha, tea, soda. And so really when you do clean up, you notice that you might be cutting out a few things that you usually have. And for some people, the alcohol is a very big stimulant. So you want to, and disturbs your sleep. So you want to cut that out, especially in the evening. All right, we're on to day 2 or step 2 if you want to do a 3-day. So day 2, step 2 is reducing the amount of high intensity workouts you do for just that period of time. I'm not saying, don't come at me. I'm not saying do not do high intensity movement. High intensity movement is amazing. Once a week, everyone, including myself, engage in high intensity movement, meaning like I'll go for a sprint, 30-second intervals or 1-minute intervals, and I'll do it multiple times, like 8 times. But for this 3 to 5 day period, because we are going into our lowering our cortisol, relaxing our nervous system mode, you want to cut down the high intensity training that you do. So it may be different for everyone. Like if you're like, I don't really do any high intensity training, then what I mean is cut down what you typically do that is high intensity for you and move into more gentler movement, meaning like outdoor walks, yoga, Pilates, all are okay, meditation, movement that is Tai Chi, like any kind of movement that doesn't really rile you up. So I'm talking yoga, walking outdoors, doing outdoor activity tends to be very calming for the nervous system and for the hormones. And cutting out just for that 3 to 5 day period, cutting out the HIIT classes, the intense classes, the aerobics, the spin, the group fitness, the things that you typically do, that women typically do that will raise their cortisol. And remember, raising your cortisol acutely, and I keep saying this because I want to drive this home, is not a bad thing. Going up for an intense spin workout is an amazing thing. But what happens is we don't often give ourselves enough recovery from these. And over time, this kind of seems to affect our cortisol system, especially in perimenopause. And because we have that sensitivity to stress that's altered, right? So cut out activities, just walking, yoga, any kind of Pilates, just for that 3 to 5 day period, you're going to notice yourself rejuvenated, okay? Day 3, you are going to do calming remedies, eat some calming foods, take some calming supplements. So here's the thing, ashwagandha, rhodiola, L-theanine, which L-theanine is naturally found in green tea. So that might be a nice swap to do in the morning when you can have caffeine, is green tea, because that L-theanine will be there. Ashwagandha is something that you can take 500 milligrams to 1,000 milligrams, but start with 500 if you're new to it. And then there's rhodiola as calming herbal remedies. And then the thing I love to do is having a calming herbal tea, like a chamomile tea, something that is very calming to the cortisol system, and having that later in the day. Having these herbal remedies to calm yourself is really great. There is something that I am not affiliated with in any way. It's called the Cortisol Manager, and it's on Amazon. I am not affiliated with this thing, but it can be really helpful in this cortisol reset because it kind of has all these things into one. Again, this is not an ad. I'm not affiliated with them, but I want to give you some options in case you want to add, kind of have a concoction there. And what I want you to do is just play around with these. So the first time you do a cortisol reset, it might just be that you're taking the Cortisol Manager, or you're doing a chamomile tea, and then maybe you're trying the ashwagandha. And then as you get better and better at it, you might have a concoction that works better for you. And ashwagandha, for example, should be taken later in the day. So make sure you know most of these things that are calming are taken later in the day, not to make you tired, and especially if you're operating heavy machinery. That's why I tell you to do this cortisol reset on a weekend, a long weekend, or a few days off, like for the client / patient that I'm talking about. It's better to do it on days off so that you have more flexibility. You get more sunlight. You are able to switch your schedule a little bit to, because the next day, like I'll say day 4, getting into day 4, is adding more sleep. And so adding 20 minutes more sleep is going to be difficult if you have a very demanding career and you have no flexibility in your schedule. So this is something to do on a weekend, long weekend, vacation, extended break, or maybe just today you decide you're going to do this cortisol reset. And day 4 actually is adding more sleep. So remember, one of the most calming things you can do for your body is actually add more sleep. So adding 20 minutes more sleep has been shown to improve all outcomes, brain outcomes, inflammation outcomes, immune outcomes, hormone outcomes. And it's great for women in perimenopause, and it's great for people that are having cortisol dysregulation. It's one of the best things you can do. And really just shifting your circadian rhythm. So you're getting more sunlight during the morning and more darkness at night, and then sleeping a little bit more. So for 20 minutes, the 20-minute extra sleeping time, you can add that on to the morning. So like instead of 6:40, wake up at 7, or you can add that on to the beginning of the night. So you start to go to bed at 9 instead of like 9:15 or 9:30. And both of those things can help you reset the circadian rhythms. I said 9 to 7, but really being asleep between 10 to 6, between the hours of 10 and 6 is a really great benchmark for those of you who are like, hey, what is a good, circadian rhythm for someone who's trying to reset it? I'm not saying it's right for everyone do their own thing. Okay. But if you wanted some guidance around that. Okay. So day 4, getting more sleep, and remember on the other end is getting more sunlight. So you really want morning sunlight within that 1 hour of waking up. You want to get a total of 1 hour of sunlight a day if you can during that week. Okay. So that's something that will really help shift your circadian rhythms, which has a huge impact on your hormone, including cortisol. And there is a direct connection between your retina and your hormonal centers in your brain, in the pituitary. And so you really do get some benefit from getting sunlight directly to your eyes. You can wear glasses or contacts, that's okay. Just don't wear sunglasses, and nothing with like a big UV filter. It's better to look at it directly than through a window. So even if you're driving, you can open your window. Hack. And so the last day number 5, is eating a cortisol calming diet. Now, there's no such thing as cortisol calming food per se, but it's eating things that your body will love, some things that are high in omega-3s, healthy fats like avocados, nuts, leafy greens, berries. Something I want you to, for these 5 days, try to avoid ultra processed foods as much as possible, meaning that for this 5 days, maybe you make a nice healthy soup that's going to last you a few of these days. Maybe you are making a salad with more leafy greens and veggies and grains. Maybe you are eating out, but you're eating healthy foods from a healthy spot. You really, really want to avoid drive-thrus where it's fast food. You want to avoid the processed food snacks that have ingredients in them that do not belong in a kitchen, meaning that if it's potato chips, it should be potato chips, salt, and oil. If there's stuff in it that is a preservative that would never be found in a healthy kitchen, that's the definition of an ultra processed food. So you can imagine that's a lot of food. So you want to do your best to minimize those ultra processed foods for these 5 days. This is not super easy, but it's super nourishing, and you can do anything for 5 days. I mean, this is going to really help your digestion, and your immune system is in your gut, talking to your gut microbiome, and they are making decisions about inflammatory signals, about how much cortisol should be released. And so by eating a super healthy, unrefined, unprocessed, or less processed diet, you're going to signal more anti-inflammatory signals and calming cortisol signals throughout your body. It's that gut-brain connection, and that's going to help you feel so much better. Okay, so I wanted to reiterate this. This is not medical advice, because and I know everyone's different. You might be like, I need only 4 hours of sleep at night, so adding 20 minutes is way too much. So that's different for you. You might say, I'm pregnant, does this pertain to me? All of those things you have to talk to your own doctor about. I can't tell you, I can't anticipate maybe some of the things. Like, for example, ashwagandha is not something you want to take if you're on chemotherapy or you're taking medications that interact with it. There are a bunch of medications that interact with that. So you want to be sure to check with that. But if you are someone who wanted a framework, take this framework and make it your own. And I will tell you that I have seen it, like, I want to say now thousands of times, where people do a bit of a cortisol reset and feel absolutely amazing on the other side. And this is not so you can change your life to become like, a dairy farmer that can just be outside all day and eat healthy foods. Like, I know this is not possible. Like, I'm a mom. I struggle with all of this. I just ate an ultra processed protein bar. Like, I'll be honest. So I know it's really hard. It's not like we can just snap our fingers, but I've done it. I've had my busy patients and clients do it. I've had my readers do it. I have published this on my social media. I have talked about this in my upcoming book. This is something that is going to be very impactful for your health. And I believe that if you put this into practice, make it your own, create your own version of this, this can be a toolbox that you can go back to every quarter, every few months when you feel like you need a little bit of a reset. You have something that you can do. I wish that I knew about this long before in my journey. So I'm Dr. Amy Shah, and thank you for joining in this episode of America's Doctor with Dr. Amy Shah. This is the Save Yourself channel. I want you to come back next week because we're going to do another episode of America's Doctor. This is all the things that I wish that everybody knew coming from a physician that's gone through my personal challenges. And I really want you to find your gifts. So I hope you found this helpful and stay tuned for the next episode.